What's going on, everybody? Unfortunately, today's podcast will have to be audio only. There was a little glitch in our software during the recording, and we almost lost the entire episode. However, Noah Graves was able to recover some of it, and we were able to give you the audio form of the episode today. So if you are consuming this episode on YouTube, feel free to keep watching. I do include a couple of the visual aids that we normally use in our podcast. However, I would like to remind our YouTube viewers that this podcast is also available on other podcasting platforms such as Spotify, Apple, and others. Basically, wherever you can find your podcast, you'll find Behind the Pulpit. So we would also encourage you to consume this podcast on those platforms as well, because this week on Behind the Pulpit, we are happy to welcome on Doug Hulin, who serves as an elder and on the worship team here at Millington Baptist Church. Together with the usual suspects, Pastor Bob and Pastor Dave, they conquer a bunch of topics like questions on heaven and psychedelic spirituality. And of course, we will jump into the news. We talk a little basketball, the topic of artificial intelligence resurfaces, and of course, as you can see by the title, we discuss the baptism of Russell Brand. Books will be recommended, theology will be sprinted, and of course, we will dive into Pastor Bob's sermon on Luke chapter 14 and the parable of the Great Banquet. Wherever you may be listening to this today, we hope you're having a wonderful day. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's edition of Behind the Pulpit.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Good to be here with you on our podcast today. Pastor Dave from Millington Baptist Church. I'm here with my esteemed colleague, Pastor Bob Urbig. What's your title around here?
Lead pastor for preaching, family life, and mission.
All right,
that's what we'll go with today.
And many other.
It's supposed to be like your yang or ying or whatever, like the flip side of the opposite of Dave, whatever that is, the reverse Dave.
Yeah. Remember that Seinfeld episode where there was like the other Jerry, Kramer, and George?
Oh, the Bizarro. I'm Bizarro
Dave.
I'll be Bizarro Dave. You'll be Bizarro Bob. There you go.
It. All right, good. And we're here with our wonderful friend and elder and worship leader and our esteemed colleague. So why don't you tell the audience who you are, my friend?
I am Doug Hulin. I'm one of the members of the worship team here. I also serve as an elder for NBC, and I'm excited to be with you guys.
Great to have you on the podcast. Is this your first time on the podcast?
I believe it is. I don't think I haven't forgotten being here before.
I can confirm that it's Doug's first time on Behind the Pulpit.
Whether...
I mean, with the Seinfeld reference already, I feel like John Bonaventura is here with us. So
John is our worship director, and if you don't know, he has a special category in his brain, a special chip in his brain to remember every Seinfeld episode and the name of the episode and the contents of the episode, such that if you could ask him any random trivia question, he has the clip on the ready to text it to you within seconds.
My mom has a chip like this.
He is a huge Seinfeld fan, and I've developed a better appreciation for Seinfeld just being friends with John.
I've developed a better appreciation for John.
Yeah. Good guy.
Yes.
Good guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, John
can quote any Seinfeld thing from any season.
John and I were texting.
I thought I was good. He's better.
He's good. John and I were texting.
Did he tell you the story? He picked out a guy who had like a minor role in one of the Seinfeld episodes, like randomly at a restaurant he was at?
Yeah. Mike was George's boss at some random job that George had, and like George didn't work there.
That was impressive.
And then Mike was, I guess, working at a restaurant, and John and his son.
I know that guy.
Hey, wait a minute. And they had a pretty decent conversation. So
yeah,
that's
there you go.
John. John and I were like arguing about Jerry's hallway. So like, if you open the door to
this
Jerry's,
is a big argument.
Like apartment, there's actually no physical room to have a hallway out there because Jerry's kitchen is in the way of this supposed hallway. So it's a set, you know.
It is a problem, right?
It doesn't really make any sense, does it? Anyway, so this show's way better than Seinfeld, and we're here to bring you all that you need to know today. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is where do we want to start this show today?
You're in charge, man. Whatever you want to talk about.
All right.
I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about, although I have veto power.
Okay. Well, let's start with our questions. We had a few questions that came in this week, and we wanted to get to your audience questions at the beginning. So... Whoa. Is that all right, Tim?
You're taking the car on off-roading right now.
I am, man. I don't know.
That's okay.
All right. So give me a question, Tim. I know a few of you asked one, And we're going to cover a couple of them today. We may not get to everything this show because there was, I think, 6. So we'll try to get a couple
People
of
had
them
some
in.
questions this week.
Yeah, just want to thank you all for continuing to ask your questions. Much appreciated. Any ones that we don't get to today, we'll try to get to next week. The first question that we have today is, someone I know claims that they found and saw an accurate vision of God while on psychedelics. Is it reasonable to say that God can reveal himself to someone on a psychedelic trip?
Wow,
that's a question. That's a wow question right there.
So last week on Behind the Pulpit, we did have a discussion with 2 raucous brothers who were discussing the topic of cannabis.
True, we did.
It was
the cannabis for the rest of us, or what was?
Perhaps this question was spurred
Canniversary,
on.
that's what it was.
Happy Canniversary. 2 years, New Jersey, lots of dispensaries, and so now we're moving into psychedelics.
What would psychedelics be?
Spirituality.
I'm not in the know here.
Yeah, like mushrooms.
I would say like mushrooms,
LSD.
acid, LSD. Like,
wow. Okay.
Peyote. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
yeah.
So I would say this is a hard no. I don't agree with this statement that these can have some sort of a spiritual awakening quality. I think primarily psychedelics are about escapism and getting away from what is real rather than revealing to your soul and conscious what is real. I think it can mimic, and our enemy, the adversary, the devil, is he's a great deceiver, and what he does oftentimes is duplicate transcendent experiences, right? So the devil is called an angel of light. He masquerades as an angel of light, and all he can really do is try to counterfeit the real experience with the transcendent, the divine. So psychedelics, drug use, that kind of thing, that can mimic some sort of transcendent spiritual experience. There's a funny story about one of the Beatles. I think it was John Lennon who was
the best Beatle
on an acid
Peter
trip.
Jones, our speaker this weekend, apparently grew up with John Lennon.
Yeah, we went to see Peter Jones, and he's he runs a ministry in, I think, California called Truth Exchange, and evidently
Truth Exchange, yep.
in 1964 when he came over, he was friends with John Lennon. Anyway, we'll tell you that another time. But I think it was Lennon or McCartney. I think it might have been McCartney. So he was on some kind of trip, and he thought that he had discovered the meaning of life on this trip, and he's like, I got it, man. I'm going to write this down. He actually found a piece of paper, wrote it down. He's like, I'm going to forget this when I'm sober again. And he writes it down, and then the next day he kind of sobers up, and he remembers there's this piece of paper. So this was Paul McCartney's, and he finds the piece of paper, and he's like, what did I write down when I was tripping? And it was the number 7. That's it. So you think you're having this transcendent, wonderful spiritual experience, but really, I think the best way to go about God is pursuing God's way through sober-mindedness and through finding Him in His Word and through experiencing.
Well, I was going to say that, wasn't it? Paul talks a lot about being sober-minded in terms of evaluating things. Romans 12 and others.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say it's actually accurate to say on psychedelics, I would question any experience you had of God on psychedelics? Like it's actually the opposite.
We're gonna go with the scriptural way to pursue God here, right? So
sounds good.
Can I interject one thing?
Please, we would love some wisdom on this topic.
I mean, I would say
my
that
vast experience with psychedelics.
Oh boy.
Yeah, after years and years, I would say that I don't think you would have an authentic experience with the Lord on psychedelics, but you may encounter, and I've read a lot of people encountering spiritual beings in those experiences that are dark in nature. So I would say when you relinquish control of yourself and your mind and open that portal, if you will, you don't know what you're going to find. I don't think you're going to find Jesus authentically, but you may encounter spirits, and so I would certainly advise against it.
There
Keep the
actually
door
is,
shut, man.
Yeah,
Keep the door shut.
Shut the door. Keep out the devil. So there is actually some evidence of the fact that paganism and idolatry in the Old Testament was associated with certain psychedelic drugs. So
interesting.
Oftentimes in the prophets, you hear Hosea or other prophets condemning the sacred raisin cakes, and you read that from a 21st
It's like,
century. You're like,
Not
what,
possible.
what
Ancient Near
were
Eastern.
they eating at these high places, and what was in there? And so
like the biblical cannabis brownies.
You know a false religion if it promotes raisins. I think.
Raisin cakes.
giveaway
Raisin
right
cakes.
there. Yeah.
There's your title for the show, Tim. Psychedelic raisin cakes.
I will take this moment to just register a thought. Last week we talked about
A notion.
marijuana and what to do with that from a Christian standpoint, and then I think we were also talking about what should we do as like a citizen. So laws are there not just to prohibit evil and harmful behavior. They're also there to encourage good and wholesome behavior and that which is best for human flourishing. So when we think about what laws we should put in place or maybe advocate for from a Christian standpoint, I think we should maybe consider that. Are these kinds of things good for humanity, good for society? Is this making us better? Is this helping us fulfill the purpose that God has for us? Yeah, I would say hard no. So that's a couple
That's
different
good.
thoughts.
Maybe
there.
this will come back up in
Psychedelics.
our focus on the In the News segment with our celebrity we're going to talk about.
And that is a good little teaser for what's coming up. So there's our first question. We want to do one more question here, Tim?
I think we have possibly more than one, but we can just do one more if you would like.
Let's do one.
Okay.
They've spent a lot of time on the psychedelics, so just one more.
Yeah.
Not literally.
What do you guys think heaven will be like? What will we do? What won't we do?
That's a great question. Something we don't know exactly, although I do think you get visions of the throne room of Christ in Revelation, particularly 4 and 5, which we're going to cover in the future here, Pastor Dave. People have a lot of speculations about it. Randy Alcorn wrote a great book called Heaven, which delves into some of those topics. But I don't know. What do you think we can know for certain versus not? How much is speculation versus... people have a view of heaven being just this one big worship service, and sometimes people think that's not that exciting. But to be in which they should think it's exciting, but to be in the very presence of God unhindered, is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. The statement makes it seem like heaven is the ultimate destiny, and maybe that's how they meant it. But
This is a great point.
heaven where God abides is a place where we will go when we leave our bodies. And that will be a temporary place where we dwell with God's presence until we're reunited with our bodies and we're resurrected. So our great Christian hope really is not heaven, it is resurrection
And new
the
heavens
new creation.
and
the
new
new
earth,
heavens
right.
and new earth.
Yeah.
So really, if you think about what heaven or the ultimate experience of humanity is going to be like, I don't think it's that different from our experience now, minus sin, the fall, and all
Redemption,
of the effects of
right.
sin. So take away all of the tears and pain and sorrow, and then just imagine this world flourishing in a way that it was originally destined to be.
Would you consider it somewhat accurate to say that it won't be exactly like the Garden of Eden, but in many ways, human
Restored.
beings, where we will have a role to play in the new creation,
Yeah.
and creativity, all of those
creativity,
good things,
work to do.
without
If
falling
we're
on our
made in
face.
the image
Yes.
of God, who is a creative, being, and all the other things you mentioned, then it would make sense to say that would be something we would embody in the new heavens and the new earth. The Bible begins in the garden, but it of course ends in a city. So there's a bit of a difference there in terms of imagery and form.
So if you are interested in this topic, Randy Alcorn's book, Heaven, really goes into a deep dive about all of these things. Imagine peaceful animal kingdoms. Imagine mountains flowing with abundant fruit, foliage, and new wine. Imagine lions laying down with lambs and little children playing with asps and not getting bit, and a wonderful experience in heaven. So it's our great hope, and we're looking forward to it. So short answer,
go.
but it's a good question.
Good.
We should do a series on the future hope that we have. Oh, we will.
Oh, we
Soon.
will.
Yeah.
Soon. Yeah.
All right. So, Tim, that's good for the questions. We'll leave it there. Is that all right?
That is fine with me.
We've got more. We'll get to those soon. But
Thanks for writing in, though. We'll get to you.
we've now come to that part of our program where we talk about what's going on in the news. So, are you scrolling? What's your news app? What are you really? How are you combining? The left and the right. How do you take in your media, and how do you actually make sense out of all of this news? There's a lot of news, and we want to talk about it a little bit. And we're going to start by saying, last night, LeBron James, or was that Saturday night? That was Saturday night. So Saturday night, LeBron James decided that he's still in it to win it, and he's not going down 3-0. And Noah Graves just made a prediction before the show that if any team could come back from being down 3-0,
It's the 2004 Red Sox. Oh, no. I'm sorry.
Is that what they came back from?
Be quiet right now.
Yeah, the
Doug is like the
I
guest
do
to have
remember.
with the athlete.
2004
right
Red
now.
Sox.
He
Yep.
just knows right
Sorry.
there. So,
Brief aside.
LeBron's still in it. We'll see what happens. The Lakers are still in it, and
No, what do you think,
that
man?
game's tonight, isn't it?
Yeah, next game is tonight.
So Monday night. So by the time this premieres, if we can get this program out, we may,
watch it during
we may be
halftime.
having tip off, and we'll see what's going
See
on.
what happens.
Yeah. So you guys been watching some NBA?
No.
Go New York, go New
I know.
York, go.
I
No.
checked the
Goodness.
scores.
Sorry, this is your thing.
Every night, man.
Well, I'm a Dallasite in origin in some ways, so I follow the Mavericks, and you may check those scores.
Yeah.
But once they won the title back in maybe 2010, 2012, somewhere around then, I felt like the NBA had given me all that I needed.
You were
And
good for a
Time
while.
to switch to the Dallas Stars, Doug.
yeah,
They're in it right now.
yeah.
Well,
Is that the
I just
hockey
like
team?
to see good. I don't really have a team, although the Mavs are doing okay. I think they lost last night, but the Bucks are doing great, and they're losing two of their stars. The Timberwolves are a lot of fun. They're just a lot of good basketball happening right now. So, what are you guys watching? What's happening in the news for you guys? What do you want to talk about, Bob?
Well, I thought we were going to talk about a famous singer that has a profession of faith
In
now.
the news, Bob's got a breaking story. I think this happened retroactively Sunday, April 28th.
Yeah, I looked up the article, although you were the one that had the idea. So this is an article. Headline is that Russell Brand is getting baptized to leave the past behind. Of course, spelled baptized in the British way, no Z. He went baptized with the S. And so Russell Brand, over the last, you may remember him. He's got a bit of a sordid past. Was married to Katy Perry for a bit. I don't know how long. I think a bit accurately describes how long they were actually married. So he has reportedly come to faith. He's been talking about that on social media. I know, Tim, I don't know if you were acting like you follow him, but you were saying you've seen some tweets
I've just seen it.
or X's.
I don't really watch his stuff when it comes up. I kind of just see that it comes up, and I saw he was
he's
getting
on-
baptized.
He's on,
Yeah.
different things. So anyway, so the article says this. So this is what Russell Brand says. He's getting baptized to leave the past behind, and then he says, "What's been explained to me is it's an opportunity to die and be reborn, an opportunity to leave the past behind and be reborn in Christ's name, like it says in Galatians. Then you can live as an enlightened and an awakened person." I don't know if that's exactly what Galatians says in those words, but
I missed the enlightened and awakened.
yeah, I don't know
part.
that the enlightened and awakened was part of the text, but I think I get what he's saying. So this is
You
interesting.
carried that over from psychedelic descriptions.
Yeah. So why don't we talk a little bit about these celebrities that have lived these very immoral lives and then come to faith and have these big professions? He's not the first one, even in recent years, to do this. What are we to make of this?
The scripture is celebrative of anyone who would.
In fact, you're
wanna
speaking about that this week. The
want to
angels in heaven
come
rejoicing.
to Christ and
right?
place their faith in Him. And so, at first, I think you would want to think the best, but I think the scriptures are also clear that we should wait and see to see if this profession of faith is indeed a genuine one. Because
Indeed.
sometimes Christians get really excited, like, "Hey, we got one on our side," and then a couple years later, that
Right,
person
right.
has kind of moved on. And so,
Yeah.
I think probably the open but cautious approach is how I think about these things.
I hope he is. Hope there's a truly
Amen.
changed life there. But I don't know Russell Brand. I've seen him from afar periodically.
I first saw him presenting some awards to Oasis or other groups at
Wonderwall?
at a British award show
Yeah.
many years ago, and he has an incredibly large personality, extremely entertaining.
Wasn't the award show he got up there?
I think it was the Brits.
And
Yeah.
Taylor Swift won something, but Kanye West jumped up and like grabbed her trophy at the. I think it was the VMAs.
That was the first red flag.
So there you go. You got Kanye and Russell Brand, and then Russell Brand came in and tried to make nice. I don't know.
I would say, I think we should take his profession at face value and pray that it is, he has experienced a truly regenerative faith and encounter with God, and that, God bless him. I mean, Jesus came for the sick. So, and I know just a little bit about his past, and I think he's been pretty open about trying to find God in psychedelics. So, I hope that it's that God has truly changed his life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do recall him doing a lot of searching lately and kind of wondering where is he going to land.
He was searching, Pastor Dave. He was searching,
Yeah.
chatting with people and all that.
Man, Bob is really, really good at this. Wow.
I don't have the big old beard though and the long hair. He's got that flowing long hair.
I got to give you props here, there, Pastor Bob. So we should start spelling
Well,
your
that's
name
just
in the
fine,
British
Pastor
way.
Dave.
Very good. So that's happening in the news. And then I think there was an AI story that you wanted to mention. Is that correct?
I just may mention this. So the update was that there's been a lot of talk recently about using this generative AI with the CRISPR technology to make these personalized and developed, tailored medical technology. So, which is interesting. I mean, I think with AI, we're going to find a lot of things that it could be used for good, and also in the wrong hands, something like this could be taken in a pretty dark direction. I think there's been quite a bit of movies about that. But I mean, if it could be used to help people with some seriously degenerative diseases, it could be a very good thing. But that is happening in the news, so that's what's going on there.
Something to think about thoughtfully
Yeah.
and in an ethically sound way. So thank you very much. That is our news segment. And we've now moved on to my favorite part of the show,
Okay.
which is the great book war of 2024.
And don't forget to give Doug a spotlight at some point.
Well,
here.
he's the one who's brought the book.
All right,
So
there we go.
Doug has come prepared, come equipped with a book recommendation. And thank you for being such a good guest and remembering to...
So he'll talk about his
Help
book,
the audience out
and then
a
we
little
have
bit.
we have a book story to mention after that.
Okay, so there's a little bit of a funny twist here. But first we want to hear, and seriously, you brought a book. What you
Yes.
got for us?
And tell us a bit about about other things that you do.
Sure. It'll weave its way in. The book is called The Cure, and no, I did not pick this up as mistakenly thinking it was a story of my favorite 80s
Rock
band.
and roll band from the 80s.
But nonetheless, I actually found this book through the Radical Mentoring program here at NBC, which I want to give a shout out to
Nice.
To that program and to our mentors, Bruce Cork and Paul Wilford, who have been just incredible. This book is called The Cure, and the subtitle here is "What if God isn't who you think He is, and neither are you?"
Ooh,
which
okay.
is somewhat provocative, but
Chapter 1, try psychedelics and find out what God is really like. No.
But I think almost everyone within the program, when we read this book, had a really positive response to it, and I would say the basic paradigm, without going too far into the weeds of each chapter, is that as believers, we tend, without maybe realizing it or maybe overtly, after we were converted, at some point we kind of make a decision, whether we realize it or not. We reach a fork in the road where we are forced to make this decision. Am I going to make my life primarily about pleasing God or about trusting God? And the premise of the book is that generally we navigate towards pleasing God because that does sound good. And but then where do either of those forks in the road lead to? And the pleasing God path will take you to what he calls, kind of allegorically, the room of good intentions, which is once you get there, you find that people are wearing masks, and there is a lot of self-effort and fleshly religion and inauthenticity, and taking the other path, the path of trusting God, leads you to the room of grace, where you find deep, authentic relationships, where you can be real about yourself, and you will actually grow from going there. And when you get stuck in the room of good intentions, you're going to burn out, and you're going to be terrified that someone would ever see behind your mask, because if your goal is pleasing God, the fact that there's still sin in your life that is ugly is that will scare you to death, that someone might know that it's there. So I actually really just love this book, and it's really been refreshing. So I would highly recommend it. And I would highly recommend the Radical Mentoring Program.
Tell us what's the Radical Mentoring? What's that all about?
It's interesting. It's really, I think we're gleaning wisdom from Paul and Bruce, our mentors, who part of the program is that they actually meet with each one of us one-on-one, almost on like a monthly basis. So we get together to have lunch or whatever and get to know them, and they get to know us. We learn where we're at in life, and maybe I can learn from Bruce, who's been my mentor, wisdom that he's found in his years. So that's been great. And then we meet as a group once a month. It's not just a book club, but that really does drive the meetings and our conversations. Is we try to read through a book each month, and there are a lot of different topics and things that the program drives you to discuss together. So it's been great to just be with a group of men in church, all encountering these books and responding to them in different ways. Some books we all love. Some of us are like, I didn't really care for that one. But it's just been a way to, I think, be real. And I think that's really needed.
How many books do you have to read for the program?
I think it's maybe 8 or 9.
You hear that, Pastor Dave? 8 or 9 books right there?
And that's like a weekend for him. I mean, so.
I am sort of. Nobody can keep up with Bob, but I occasionally.
All right. So thank you, Doug. I want to hear about the worship thing, but can we tell the story about this weekend?
All right.
So we went to Dave and I went to a.
Bob is winning the book
we went.
war.
We went. No, okay, but we went to this conference this weekend. It was called "Living in an Anti-Christian World." So there was some speakers that were talking about current issues and how we should handle that. And one of the things at the back of this brochure they gave us was a survey. And if you put that into the bowl and your name got pulled out, you were going to win an award of all these this collection of books right here. And so it was funny
because a couple hundred people.
It was a few hundred people, right? Okay, so yes, it was impressive, Dave. I guess so. Dave put his name in, and then they went to
Did
pull
you put
the
your name in?
I didn't put my name in, so I you're welcome.
He single-handedly improved my odds by not entering the contest.
So anyway, so they went to pull the names out, and the guy. I don't know what's going on with your handwriting, because the guy called out the name
good.
Dave.
I can tell you what's going on with my
Dave
handwriting.
Henderson.
It ain't working. I don't know what happened.
They say yes, literally Dave Henderson.
Henderson.
And then it was like Hendebell.
Hindenburg.
And then Dave said it was
Hindenburg.
Henschel.
I'm like,
Henschel.
At first, I'm like, I didn't win. Some other guy, Dave Henderson, won. And I'm looking around. Nobody's like, Dave Henderson's not there. So then he tries something else, and I'm like, I think this guy's got my name, and I can't, I don't have good handwriting. So Henschel, I went up. Look at this, Tim. Get this on camera, man. He gave me an entire set of J.C. Ryle.
Yeah, and I took a picture of Dave right after he got it. The only time I've seen him smile like this right here in this picture
Yeah,
is
man.
when we talked about charts last week. That was unbelievable.
If you don't know, J.C. Ryle in the 1880s was the bishop in Liverpool, and this is the set I got, man. This thing's going to take me some time, but it does have 2 volumes on Luke, and so you can see I'm going to get this.
So I
I'm
expect
gonna
to start
using
hearing
this
some
right away.
J.C. Ryle quotes.
This Sunday. I'm going to
Yeah.
pull a quote
There you
out
go.
this Sunday. So I am losing the book war, guys. I'm losing.
Well, it looks like you're winning today, so you got that.
I
Plus
think
the
Bob
books that
rigged,
you purchased.
You rigged that.
I,
You rigged that drawing somehow. Somehow you got my name
I
pulled.
guess.
And like,
I guess.
I got an idea.
I only got a couple books at the thing. The one I'm most excited to read is this Insider Outsider, How God Makes Insiders from Outsiders and Helps Us Talk About Our Faith by Pierce Taylor Hibbs. I went to his.
You went to go see him talk.
I went to see him
you
talk.
were enraptured in
He
that.
was really
in that
good. I'm
talk.
looking at reading that book. So that's Insider Outsider. That was my big pickup. But Dave, look at that. He's got a mountain of books over there, and
I got a lot of work to do.
we got to work on your handwriting, though, Pastor Dave.
It's not good, man. I don't know what happens. Like I get to the end of the sentence and it just gets worse and
That's
worse and
right.
worse. Is
So-
your penmanship kept up over the years?
It's
or-
terrible.
It's
I
like,
mean,
Mine is
what
like
happened?
I can't write anymore.
I would bring home my report card in elementary school, and that was the one. I mean, you know,
Oh, it was never good.
it was always
Oh.
the problem in the grades. So
That's it.
they don't even really make them write cursive anymore. So I mean,
Mine's deteriorated.
yeah.
All right. Well, so that's the book segment. Thank you, Doug. Hey,
Thanks,
check
Doug.
it out. The Cure. It's
Inside
awesome.
Radical
recommendation.
mentoring is coming up.
This one's pretty reasonable. I mean, it's only
Yeah.
140 pages. So
Is that about the size that you guys normally? Is it like they get bigger than that, or sometimes the big thick books are really intimidating.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that, you know, a man of any, you know, substance can complete within a
Awesome.
month, I
That's
think,
great.
you know.
Awesome.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
So we've come to that part of our show where we talk about the weekend message. And this weekend it was Pastor Bob diving into Act 4, a new section,
4.
a new
Boom.
segment, a new portion, a new...
He's gonna say.
What do we want to call this,
A new
man?
dispensation.
A new economy. Act 4, we're
Not a new
moving into
covenant.
story territory here. We're telling stories, Bob?
We're telling stories. So we were saying that we've been going through Luke. By the way, we're going to be extending Luke to the end of the summer because we had a couple other ideas that we just thought didn't fit for the summer. But we also felt like we were
Extension.
moving a little bit quick through Luke. So the stories, the parables, are going to go to the end of June. And Luke 14 to 19 has just this cluster of really famous parables from Jesus. Probably the most famous one, the one you're talking about this coming week, the parable of the prodigal son. Everybody knows that story, I think.
As far as the most famous parables, it's either the prodigal son or the Good Samaritan.
Or the Good Samaritan,
I don't
yeah,
know.
which are both in Luke, though. So we
They
already
are.
covered the Great Good Samaritan. Sidney Bowie talked about that.
He did. Mr. Bowie, shout out
But
to
yeah,
Mr.
Jesus
Bowie.
is on the road. He stopped in for dinner with a well-known Pharisee, and things got a little crazy, a little upside down.
There was a healing.
There was a healing at the beginning,
Dropsy.
which was part of the context, may or may not have been the reason Jesus told this story, because there was a focus on the poor and the crippled and the lame and the outcasts and all that. But
So if I was hanging out with Jesus and he started telling me a story, is that a pretty good indication that I'm not behaving right? Like, oh man.
well, I mean, sometimes
about
he
to get a
goes. Sometimes
story.
he goes with with folks, but yeah, I don't know. He does look for the outcasts though, and the insiders.
He does. So give us a 60-second summary of Luke 14.
60-second summary of Luke 4, the entirety of Luke 14. Let me do that, and then
If
I'll
you can.
zero in on the So the entirety of Luke 14, most of it is Jesus sitting at this this dinner with the Pharisees, and the opening scene is Jesus confronting the Pharisees again on this healing issue. There was a man with dropsy. He was really sick, and Jesus heals him on the Sabbath, and then he kind of tussles with the Pharisees again, and he tells them basically, would you not heal him if he was in need of help? And then he tells one parable, the parable of the great wedding feast, which is focused on humility and where you should sit in relation with the host, because that was an indication of your status in society. Then he tells the parable of the Great Banquet, which is what we focused on yesterday. And the subsets we basically looked at the fact that that parable had three sections. One the invitation. Number 2, the excuses, and then the last one was the shocking replacement. Because the main point is that the people you think will attend the party don't actually come. The ones you expect will be there aren't always on the guest list. And part of the excuse piece is what got us into the end of Luke 24, which talked again about the cost of discipleship. So you had all these people who say they want to come, but then they're making excuses, and Jesus talks about how if you can't lose your life, you can't be my disciple. So those are the main themes that we covered within the message, and I'll take questions now.
Very good. Thank you for that good exposition of the Word of God. I really appreciated your take on all of that and helping us understand really the heart of Christ. Doug, did you get a chance to attend church yesterday?
I did.
I was in the front row, man. I saw him there.
Front row, Doug. All right. So,
yeah.
Doug, what was your takeaway? What did you appreciate about yesterday's passage?
I think it's really important for us to look at who are these people that ultimately are at the party. And it's the broken, it's those that have nothing in themselves to offer. And I think maybe that's what is required of us to come to faith, is recognizing that we just I can't do it. I don't have it, God. You're going to have to do it. And it's so counter to the way the world works. The beautiful, the strong, whatever are the ones that we feature, and here, the invitation, they ignore it, and the ones who have nothing are the ones who get to enjoy. And it's I think beautiful. It makes me think of I'm gonna botch the beatitude. Somebody has to help me out. I guess blessed are the poor in spirit, and
Sure.
For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So, those who recognize their emptiness are the ones who really, in the end, are the most blessed.
Yeah.
Going back to the cure, it's not those who
The
are
cure.
seeking to
There
be
you go.
pleasing to God, but those who are willing to trust God. It's a similar fork in the road there, right? So there's this great Shane and Shane song called "Bring Your Nothing," and I think that really speaks to this idea. Like I don't have anything, so why don't you bring your nothing and come to the table, come to the banquet, come to the party, and we're invited. So, Pastor Bob, I got a question for you.
Shoot away.
Fire away.
Fire away.
Yeah, that's a different podcast.
Watch
You should
the
check
Fresh
it out, though. Fresh Wave is in the house. So, my question for you is, you use some big theological words here in the message. You talked about kaleo, which is the Greek word for call, and then you were saying that word's used different ways. And could you help us understand what you meant by the soteriology there? How is there multiple calls, and how do they fit together, and what in the world are we supposed to understand about salvation? Who's called? And
the Greek word for invitation that's used in Luke is kaleo, which means called, right? And so the people that ultimately attend the party are the ones that are the called out ones of God. So what was interesting in studying the passage is that in the ancient world, just in general, there was typically a double invitation to any kind of banquet or party that was put out. There was the party's going to happen. I'm going to throw a party. Will you come? But you really didn't know exactly when the party was going to happen. And then the second invitation focused on the actual summons. Hey, the food is ready. Now it's time to actually come. And I think Jesus is setting up this dichotomy of people that promise at the beginning they'll come, something better comes along, and then they don't actually make it to the banquet. So what theologians talk about in terms of, and if you want to get into the theological term would be the ordo salutis, the order of salvation. There is an invitation that goes out to all. That's the gospel call. That if you've heard the gospel, you've heard that. That's the invitation to come to Christ. But not all are saved. So the actual effectual call that comes into effect are only the people that truly respond and come to Christ and persevere until the end. So those were the categories we were trying to set up. I didn't do a chart. I did do a line.
there is a chart for that.
I did. You didn't see my final slide. I did a a two-sided thing, the gospel call and the effectual call.
That counts as a chart.
Okay.
If
You think
there's more than one
a rudimentary
side,
chart? Maybe not to your liking.
you got
but
it's a table at least.
It's
I
a
mean,
drawing at
you're
minimum.
close.
a drawing.
You know.
I do like the quadrants.
I feel like that
though,
counts
sometimes.
as a chart for that.
All
So
right.
that's
Flow-
helpful.
flow
That's
chart.
a helpful category.
So we talked about those. That I didn't do that in the original one. So the final product, I got rid of a couple things and used those two categories.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's important to understand that the parable, and because Jesus applies it to himself at the end, I think is at least pointing towards the eschatological, the future banquet of the Lamb. When Jesus comes back, he makes all things right, and then we will come to the marriage supper of the Lamb, those that are truly followers of Christ.
Just so you know, that's not
Yeah.
an ancient concept only, this double invitation. In fact, almost every night when we make dinner for the kids, there has to be at least a double invitation, sometimes a triple invitation. It's like, hey, dinner's
How it is in
ready.
your house.
Hey, dinner's ready.
And you know
then
what's
it's like,
interesting?
step up the stairs,
Oh.
go knock on the door. I said dinner's ready. Come on down.
Well, you know what? Very interesting. I wish I thought about this. My kids do the same thing in a different way because they're younger. But hey, dinner's ready. Oh, I'm still playing. I got to do stuff.
Right.
There's always an excuse as to why they can't come up for dinner when the meal was served.
Right. You
In
gotta-
our
so
house-
that's the general call. Then you got to give them the effectual call.
right.
In our house, it's dinner's just about ready, and then they scatter. And
Yeah.
so maybe that just is because there's maybe some responsibility that's about to happen. I don't know.
Exactly.
Perhaps, or they're
Right.
like the lost sheep that we'll hear about this week, and you have to go and drag them back to the party, right?
Leave the 99 at the
Yeah.
table and grab the
Yeah.
one. Yeah, good. So let's fast forward to the ending. So you had a challenge, and the challenge was kind of twofold. The first was for this person who's not yet at the banquet, and you're saying, "Hey, get in the room."
Yeah.
What might be getting in the way there for somebody who doesn't want to get in the room? What are the barriers for
Yeah,
people
it's-
who are hesitant?
That's a great question. Yeah, by the way, I switched the language. So the language in the text is still there is room, and so the master sends his servant out to find more people to come in. So the challenge was, if you're somebody who's not crossed the line, who's not a believer, then just get in the room. And your question about the barriers is a good one. I think for a lot of folks, there might be some intellectual. Well, actually, I think on a previous podcast, we talked about kind of the three types of doubt. So there's intellectual doubt, there's emotional doubt, and then volitional doubt. Maybe
There's
that's the
a
way
chart for that.
There is a chart for that. I can make a chart for that one. So the intellectual doubt, maybe you just have some questions that haven't been answered and you're really seeking and searching. The emotional doubt piece, which usually creates a host of barriers, is something has happened to me that has caused me to have poor feelings towards God. Maybe there was abuse, or there was somebody died. I prayed for them, and God didn't heal them. Or whatever. So that can be a barrier. All the things that are kind of in that issue, and then volitional doubt, though, I think is people that they've heard, they might ask questions, but they're always trying to find reasons, even though they know what the truth is, to not come to the banquet, so to speak. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that maybe there's a whole lot of stuff underneath those, but that might be a couple
I think
reasons.
sometimes we can fall into a trap of thinking that I'm not really worthy to go to the banquet, and who would want me there? Personally, I mean, this has only occurred to me in the last 20 seconds when you were talking about this, but I was, maybe in the last year, I realized kind of around this same kind of banquet scenario, if you think of heaven as the greatest banquet that has ever been thrown, right, and it's going on for eternity, I realized that, I knew for myself that legally I was invited, and I'll go there. By the grace of God, I believe that I belong to Him, and I'll
Through a technicality, he had to invite you because
exactly
he's obligated.
And it's almost like when I get there, I'm gonna get to the outer area where the maitre d' or whoever is like, oh, let me see if your name's on the list. Yes, Doug, you can come in, but I got to be
I hope
honest
my
with
name is spelled right when I like.
I mean,
That's right.
when I get there,
When the
like
roll is
Dave
called up yonder,
Henderson.
Dave Henderson.
No, it's got to be check the penmanship.
At least it'll be spelled correctly. I don't know if my name will get pronounced correctly, but But
What's the worst people botch your name?
I mean, I've been called Duck. So, I mean, and that's not even getting to my last name. But anyway, I realized that I thought, when I arrived, that whoever was there, this theoretical person minding the door would say,
He's losing it.
"It's true. I had a Whataburger. You know what those are."
That's some good strawberry shakes, man.
Yeah. The person at the door would say, "Yes, you're allowed in. We can't deny you entry, but we need you to stay in the
Right,
vestibule
right.
because
Special.
God, yeah, you're just not one of the you're not
that
one of the
place.
really good ones. You didn't perform well enough." And that's a terrible thing to think that way, to think that God's love, extends to you a certain
Yeah.
amount, but not really. He
Not the
doesn't really
whole way.
like me,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just thinking about that invitation to the banquet from your message, like to really
Embrace it.
and how much it's just a full invitation. It's not. Oh yeah, you can come. It's please come. I love you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you,
Yeah.
Doug. Appreciate that. I think a lot of
It's
people
really
can
cool.
relate to that. So the second challenge at the end was not so much you get in the room, but there are people that you know
Fill
that,
up the
that are
room.
not yet
There you go.
at the table. So fill up the room. So what do you think stops us from filling up the room? What do you think gets in the way of us taking this invitation to the streets and going out in the highways and byways and compelling our friends and family to come in? What do you think are some hindrances there?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Pastor Dave, because I think there's a couple reasons. Number one, I think people are they're intimidated. Maybe is a good word to say. They're intimidated to share because they're concerned about maybe relational rejection more so now than previously. They're not sure what to share, how to share about their faith. The culture now feels a little bit more hostile because we're less Christian. So I think those are all reasons that people bring up. On the one hand, on the other hand, I think a lot of people do not go out because we can create this kind of this insider outsider motif is really popular in Luke, and we're going to see it a lot in the other parables. Even this week coming up too, you have the elder brother, the younger brother, the outsider, the insider.
Are you just trying to get me to read that book?
Well, no, but it's you told me to use this language in the message too. It was your idea, and then it came up
man.
this weekend.
All
so
right.
don't be acting like
Just
you're not a
pass
part of
it
this over
over.
here.
Just
All
pass it over.
There you go.
I'll take a look.
Insider, outsider. Well, actually, so the reason that that guy wrote that book and used the insider, outsider language was because he was trying to find a way that our culture currently sees our voices our problem, and everybody, like the heartfelt longing of everybody is to belong, is to be part of an insider of some group, and that's why certain groups are grow over others. But the point is that we can all have a tendency to become Pharisees, to think that, oh, look at me and how wonderful I am. Those people over there don't deserve my attention. In fact, they're too unlovable for. Why would God save that person because of what they've done? And so we start to look down our noses at fill in the group, the people that are behind the wall in our minds, and so we don't take the time to go and pursue the people that we normally overlook, and that becomes an excuse of us not going out to reach the people that maybe God's calling us to reach. So there is an intimidation thing, but then there's also, for lack of a better term, there's a pride thing, I think, that comes in, and those are at least two reasons why people don't fill up the room or pursue people to come into the room as much as they should.
I just want to mention that there's a chart.
There's a chart.
in the
There
book,
is a chart.
right here about insiders and outsiders that actually goes through redemptive history.
Oh
creation,
my
fall,
goodness!
redemption, consummation.
I'll bring that up the
and
next
how
time I'm up there.
At the beginning, you're sinless outsiders.
Notice the first thing he noticed in this whole book was
catches
the
my
chart.
eye, man. Page 53.
Flips through. Is there a chart? Is
In
there a chart in this
creation,
one? Not
we're
worth my time.
In creation, we're sinless outsiders invited into a trusting relationship with the Trinity, trusting.
There you go.
In the fall, we're inside seekers, separated from God by sin.
Yeah.
In redemption, we're called insiders by the promise of God through Christ. And finally, in consummation, we are in unbroken fellowship with the Trinity. Wow. So that kind of gets into the heaven question. That gets into the insider-outsider issue, man.
It
This is a good
does.
chart. There's a chart for
does.
that. And it's
By
a
the
good
way,
message.
his whole seminar, the guy who wrote that book, was on Machen in the 21st century. You remember Machen from a few weeks ago? So he created a chart on the whiteboard to compare and contrast the old liberalism and the new liberalism. Just so you
Right.
know, there was a chart involved in that seminar that you missed.
I love it. Don't you? Come on. So thank you, Pastor Bob. Anything else
I
on
expect
that?
a fattened calf this week for your message, Pastor Dave.
Anything else on the message, man?
No, I just think it's such a wonderful story. I'm really glad that we started with it, but the parable of the Great Banquet is really instructive for us in terms of understanding God's love for us and how far He would go, and then what He calls us to do in response. So it's a good one to meditate on.
Thank you so much. And we've now reached that part of our show where we do a little sprinting, Doug. We get a little theological and we do a little running.
So ready to
Sometimes
sprint.
fast, sometimes slow, sometimes medium.
I'm going to encourage the sprint this time. I think we've been slacking on our pace here.
We have been doing a bit of the medium relay.
All right, Doug.
So
All right.
He's calling us up.
Your question today is, why doesn't God just reveal himself to everyone, and then that way everyone would believe in him?
Yeah, sure. The answer to that question is that God actually does reveal himself to everyone. Romans chapter 1 says that he has revealed himself clearly to all of his creation through what has been made. So because of the creation around us, we see his power, we see his attributes. And it's not that people don't know that God exists, it's that they are certain that God exists and they don't want to serve him, and they are actively suppressing that knowledge of him all day long. And so because of this, God's judgment, God's wrath is on humanity. And the good news of the gospel is that he's made a way to invite us to the banquet, though we are broken and sinful, and we get to come anyway. So it's not that we need to go tell people about news about God that they'd never have thought of or heard of. That's not the case. If they've never heard of God, then they wouldn't be responsible and they wouldn't be guilty. In fact, that'd be the worst thing that we could ever do, is go there and tell them about it, because then they'd know and then they'd be responsible and guilty. We ought to build walls around these people and say, don't tell them they're innocent. But they're not innocent. They do know God, and they know that he exists with certainty, and we need to share with them the good news of the gospel, which is the only hope that there is. 60 seconds, man. What do you think? Time limit? I was close.
It was wonderful.
That was
Pastor Dave. I'll give
that
you
was a
thumbs up.
sprint. That was a sprint.
All right.
Thank you
I
for
ran fast that time.
chasing Dave down to make sure we got the sprint there
Yeah.
for that one.
Tim,
That's
I
good.
appreciate the challenge, man.
All right.
We do sometimes add to the
That's what I'm
sprint,
here
though.
for.
Is there
Yeah.
Any other
It's
thoughts?
It was a
We got
sprint.
5 minutes left, so I don't know if we can add to that one this week. I thought your answer was wonderful. Unless
Okay.
Doug wants to. It's a Doug's time.
I feel like Dave covered all the bases.
All right.
I think just the one thing you hear people say is like, why doesn't God just send down a pillar of fire and be like, I'm God, or something like that, and people
Right.
be like, oh. I feel like the argument for that
There's
is
a
like
desire
people still
for
wouldn't
God-
believe it.
God for us to pursue God. Like he wants us to pursue him even as he's revealed himself.
We're going to talk about this concept when we get to Luke 16. There's a story about a man who's in hell who is going to say, hey, go back and warn my family about this place. And
Yeah.
the answer that he's given is actually kind of mysterious. Jesus actually says, well, if they don't believe the law and the prophets, they're not going to believe even if somebody rises from the dead.
Yes, it's true.
And so the issue there with people who are not faithful is not that they don't have information. The issue is that they have a
It's true.
suppression, a moral issue. So the fool in the Bible is someone who
Yeah.
hates God. And it's not an intellectual issue. It's a moral
Yeah.
charge.
Yeah.
All right.
That's my passage. We were going to do it on Mother's Day, but then we thought better, in the
Good call.
In the original
Good call.
lineup.
Moms, Bob's trying to help you out here. All right.
I love it. Should we talk about what's going on in the life of
Yeah,
our
a
church?
couple things. So let's do some announcements as we wrap it up today. Doug, what is this?
It is.
Are you playing this year?
No.
Man.
Oh, last year they brought the house down.
Yes. Last year, my sons and I had the privilege to play on the stage at Charter Day, and our set was
Taking a break
almost
this
prematurely cut short, but we'll get into that later. Charter Day is a great opportunity for our church to be really present in Basking Ridge. It's the town's kind of annual celebration of its founding. You can clearly see inflatables. There's probably some unhealthy food. There's live music. There's games.
Fried Oreos.
Yeah.
2 words.
Exactly. And that's, again, if you circle back to the raisins earlier, you can make your own judgments about God's food choices. But Charter Day is a great opportunity for us
on the raisins.
Psychedelic fried Oreos.
Yeah. Anyway, Charter Day is
If
a great
you watch
opportunity
the
to
show
serve
all the
and
way
volunteer.
through, we just connected every dot.
There it
Yeah,
is.
that's just like a good Seinfeld episode.
Full
Very
circle
good.
right there.
And you got that one in too. So Charter Day, don't miss it. It's coming
You're
up here in the
welcome.
month of May. And another announcement. Tim, what is this?
Bob.
Well, we've been calling it Boss because we don't want to confuse
Boss.
you and Bob.
Where's the S?
Band of super studs. Anyway,
All right.
so
I feel like that's
All right.
false advertising. That
well,
should be-
the thing is, we'll refer to it as Bob, but there's Bob and then you're Bob, so it's confusing. So Band of Brothers High School Boys Discipleship Group, it's been great. We've had 2 meetings so far. It's been great. If you are a parent of a high school boy or you are a high school boy, we'd love to have you. 7 o'clock on Thursdays up in room 202 in the Youth and Family Ministry building. We are going through the book Disciplines of a Godly Man by Kent Hughes. So we've really enjoyed going through that thus far, and we can learn. Looking forward to continuing to go through it.
yeah. By the way,
That
I was
kind of a book recommendation. Just slid it in there. at
That's
the
true.
end.
By the way, I was really impressed you're doing that book. I actually read through that book with some folks in college. That's a really good one for some young men.
And Bob
Great.
could not help
Hard
himself,
candy.
but
Love it.
letting us know
Hard candy.
he read that one also.
You know what?
We know, Bob.
It took me back. It was
We know.
wonderful.
Yes.
I'm glad
There's
that we
some
picked a
godly
good
men
one.
coming out of there.
Amen. Finally,
Bosses.
The shuttle. Yes.
Hey, we're having some parking issues
on.
at the 9 o'clock service. And one way that you could be self-sacrificial and Christ-like and serve your neighbor and allow a seat at the table at the banquet for somebody who isn't yet here.
Make
One way
room.
that you can make some room, one way that you can fill up the room is by actually parking just slightly across the street there, just slightly farther than you would normally. You get to ride our
Just to
beautiful
the north.
shuttle.
Just to the north.
Park at the Chabad and save some spots in the NBC parking lot. Particularly, we want to encourage those people who are here for the first service. That parking lot situation, well, it's kind of dicey. There were some cars on the grass yesterday. There was some double parking going on. There was some people wondering, hey, is there any room at this table for me or not? So, hey, help us out. Park at the Chabad. We would appreciate that.
in the new heavens and in the new earth, we might have unlimited parking spots, but currently we do not. So
This is true.
We're
Parking
still-
will not be a problem when the new heavens come to earth.
We're in the already not yet. So we're in the still got parking problems. Anything else for announcements, Tim?
that's all I got.
All right. Thank you guys for watching today. Doug, great to have you on the show today, man.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
The Cure.
Awesome.
Check it out.
Yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good rest of your day.